英国剑桥大学的学术期刊《中国季刊》近来应中国政府的要求，删除了300多篇涉及6·4镇压、新疆、西藏等问题的文章，引起学界强烈反弹。北京大学美中贸易关系专家包定博士日前发起了联署行动，反对学术审查。至8月22号，已经有超过1000人联署。剑桥大学也于当天宣布恢复了被删除的文章。与此同时，剑桥大学出版社的另一本学术杂志《亚洲研究期刊》也被中国要求删除敏感文章，但负责该期刊的亚洲研究协会已经对此表示反对。中国政府要求外国学术期刊撤销敏感文章，到底意味着什么？这些举动又是否是进一步行动的信号？今天我们请到了发起联署行动的包定教授，请他谈谈自己的看法。Hello, Dr. Christopher Balding.
Thank you for having me, Jeff.
So my first question is about Cambridge University Press. Initially, they decided to remove this article, then restored those articles. So how do you understand their decision?
They initially removed the articles at the request of the Chinese government, and it's not entirely clear how the information leaked out. The information started leaking out that Cambridge had made this decision, and then they actually announced that they'd done it. Over the weekend, there was a lot of pressure on Cambridge University Press to restore these articles and place the onus on the Chinese government to block the articles. Cambridge restored them, and my understanding now is that these articles are blocked in China. It seems very clear that that basically this was pressure that was applied to Cambridge University Press based upon the principles of free speech that academics and universities and publishing houses in many parts of the world strongly believe in, and making this a decision that is forcing the Chinese government to make a decision rather than placing the requirements on Cambridge.
Mm-hmm. So you initiated the petition to call on the university press to restore this, to refuse the censorship request. So what's your major rationale in this petition?
I am very sympathetic to the position that Cambridge University Press found itself in. I think, first of all, that it's very important to recognize that sometimes principles have costs. And it's very easy to do things like stand up and make your opinion heard in the United States. But sometimes following your principles has costs. And for Cambridge University Press, that means upholding the value of freedom of speech. And most importantly, even more importantly, beyond Cambridge Press, I think it's very important that universities around the world and academics and even publishing houses think more closely about how to engage with China, because China is trying to really crack down on censorship within China, and they're trying to export their censorship around the world. So I think it's very important that universities and academics think a lot more about what this means engaging with China going forward.
Mm-hmm. So would this request influence you personally if the university press did not restore those articles?
Well, basically, in the petition, we had said, I had said that we would have to think about how to interact with either the China Quarterly, the journal that this first happened to, and Cambridge University Press. And so they have changed course, and so they are offering those articles again. So I think that has made our decision very easier, but I do think it is important that academics and universities think very closely about how to engage with China going forward if we're going to face continual requests for censorship.
Mm-hmm. Since you initiated this petition, are you afraid of punishment when you return in China?
That is an issue that has crossed my mind. I've discussed it with my wife. And first of all, I can say that, as I mentioned earlier about Cambridge University Press, sometimes standing up for principles is not exactly easy. and you have to accept some of those consequences. I go back hoping that I will be allowed to stay and that it won't be a problem. I also understand that it could be a problem. And the second thing is that most importantly, hopefully, it will cause universities and academics around the world to consider how they engage with China and make these ideas much more important when engaging with China.
So now you are teaching in China. So how do you understand the request of the Chinese government?
Well, I think within the past 2 years, I've lived in China for 8 years now. And for the past couple of years, there has definitely been a crackdown and a tightening of requirements on professors and many other throughout all of China, not just professors. So I think it is very clear the trend that the Chinese government is going to try and impose greater censorship, not just on controversial ideas, but even in the past few months, shutting down various streaming services that were doing completely non-political things. So I think this is definitely a concerning trend for how the Chinese government is imposing censorship more and more.
Mm-hmm. Did you see the list of the articles blocked by this request? So what kind of articles were blocked?
I think they were very clearly the types of articles that I would have expected to see on a blocked list. I'll be honest in saying, as a foreign professor in China, there's basically a couple of things that I really won't discuss. I'm a business school professor, so I talk frequently about economic policy, financial policy, things like that. But I kind of joke that with people that as long as I don't discuss what I call the 4 T's, I can say most anything that I want in China. And the Cambridge University Press list of blocked articles was pretty much the list of 4 T's. And that is Taiwan, Tiananmen, Tibet, and the party. So I think those are what the articles were, and those are pretty much what many in China tried to avoid talking about even beforehand.
Mm-hmm. I just read a news report saying that an article defending Mao Zedong on China Quarterly was blocked. Meanwhile, articles about the Great Famine from 1958 to 1961 was not blocked. What could this scenario suggest to the request of the Chinese government?
It seems like that it was a very blunt attempt, and what I mean by blunt is it seems like somebody went through the China Quarterly catalog and was looking for keywords. Okay, so let's assume that they wanted to block articles related to anything. So they would look for a keyword like Tiananmen or Tibet or something like that. And so any article that had that keyword, Taiwan, Tiananmen, Tibet, whatever the exact keyword that they had, and so they would just block all articles that contained that word. Okay, so that's probably why some of these articles that were, had ideas that they would have supported probably got caught up because somebody was just using a keyword finder, and any article that had a keyword was blocked.
In the petition, you mentioned that China is attempting to export its censorship on sensitive topics. Do you think the event on China Quarterly is kind of a trial of a larger scale of actions?
It very frequently is when they take these types of actions that they're going to test them and see what kind of pushback they get. So I think what is most concerning to me is the outside world has very little influence on how China is going to censor its own domestic media, but foreign governments and institutions absolutely have lots of influence about how much censorship China is allowed to export overseas. And so I think it's very important that China not be allowed to export censorship of ideas or issues that it deems critical to its regime, that it not be allowed to export that censorship overseas.
Yeah, thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you very much for having me, Jeff. I appreciate it.